Hello, and welcome to episode number 30 of Creativity Conversations. And today I have the delightful pleasure of talking with Liese Gardner. Liese, welcome. Thank you for
Hi,
being here.
thank you.
And if you haven't been on these calls before, the purpose of them is to disabuse people of the notion that they're not creative or that their lives don't have any elements of creativity in it. And what's great about these conversations is we get to listen to people who understand the nature of creativity, they embody it, and they share it with other people. So I'm going to start out with Lisa's bio as a springboard, and then we're just going to see where things go from there. So Lisa has spent 3 decades doing what she loves, helping creative entrepreneurs build successful businesses with a marketing framework focused on what differentiates them, their passion. Lisa believes that a business built on passion is the secret to longevity, growth, and most importantly, happiness. So we'll definitely focus on that.
Mhm.
Collaborative, focused, and helpful, Lisa's background as a magazine editor has made her especially adept at pinpointing, clarifying, and amplifying her clients' messages with a marketing framework she calls brand therapy. Through this content forward style of marketing, she's helped hundreds of top brands grow and thrive and consistently increase exposure and awareness in their marketplaces and build revenue and sales, excuse me. And Lisa's website is www.liesegardner.com. So,
Right.
so glad to have you here today.
Thank you for having me here, Nina. I'm so honored to be
Oh,
among so many great. I looked at your other interviews, and everyone's wonderful. So I'm so glad to be here among them.
well, it's only fitting.
Thanks. Thank you.
When we were chatting before, you were talking about stories and telling people stories, and that most people don't realize that their lives are made up of lots and lots of stories about who they are. And I would love to hear a little bit about your romance with telling stories and telling the stories that are the most helpful and help people be authentic and go towards that happiness factor that I mentioned earlier.
Um, well, okay. So I think we come at it from two perspectives here. I guess from the marketing angle of how you
Mhm.
tell your story and present it to the people that you would like to work with in the future. And then as an artist and just simply wanting to um, be creative. And first, I'd like to start with the word creative. I'd like to get to that word marketing too, because I really don't like it. I think it doesn't like, sum up everything
Mm,
that we are or do. It's such a limiting word. People like hear it and think something different. But when I am talking about creativity, I'm actually talking about the act of creating. So people say like, "Oh, you're so creative" or something, but that's just so nebulous. Because what
mm.
does that mean to be creative? I would think to be creative means to look at your story and then be able to create something from it that you can then connect with other people, because that is all that I want to do with marketing. And I always call it kind of heart-centered marketing, or my brand therapy, which we can get into, which is
Mhm.
people-oriented marketing. And so what you're doing is trying to create a story or create a connection really with telling a story.
Yeah.
um, and that's kind of where I'm coming from, I suppose, with the stories. And so I've taken it further into working with writers now, and
Mm.
working on their stories and then helping them market themselves, and working with artists and photographers, as well as people who are business people. So it's really been an interesting journey. So I'm not sure, there's a lot of directions to go from there. So why don't you
Yeah.
ask me which direction you'd
Okay.
like me to kind of delve into?
So if we go back a little bit to your incarnation in the magazine world as an editor and a journalist, how did you go from there to working as a branding and marketing consultant?
Yeah, so that was a while back. That was, I was out of college. Um, I actually have always loved magazines and writing, but I also loved film and the visual story. So I got out of or I went to college to kind of maybe go into film, and that sort of didn't work out. So I took a gap. I took a gap 2 years actually and worked for a magazine. And at some point I was like, I would like to I want to do this. I like this. I like telling the stories. I had a mentor there or several there. And they finally said, you need to go back to school. So, and we'll have a job waiting for you. And I said, that's nice. So I went back to journalism school and went to a very vocational journalism school rather than like, say, like USC or UCLA, that would be more academic minded. And I highly recommend that simply because I was taught by people who are in the business, so I learned editing from the
Mm,
editor at the LA Times, or I learned storytelling from a Los Angeles magazine writer.
mm.
And they also allowed us to create our own magazines. So I've always been like
Ah,
creating little magazines. My friends who were still at Art Center, we created like a little magazine and told the stories of each other in it. Very, I don't know, very, what is it, Bloomberg or something from the English countryside of hanging out together and creating our own little newsletters. So I've always been interested in doing that, and that's why that's why I'm seeing like creativity versus creating, because I think you can be creative all you want, but it takes that one act of then taking it to the next level and creating something. And I think that's the difference for a lot of people who can be very, very talented, and yet they are afraid to take it to the next level and create something that they put out in the world. So that got me off the subject. But I did then, once I was done at I was with Special Events Magazine. So it was a magazine that I was writing about creative people all the time. These people were in the event industry. So
mhm.
they were putting on amazing, amazing weddings, World Cups, Olympics, things like that. So they were very creative and very creator. Is it create? I'm gonna make a word, creatorial.
Good.
They were very creatorial. And so then when I left there, I loved that industry, and I realized that there were a lot of people that did not understand how to connect to media. As
Mm.
an editor, I would always ask them, I'm like, please send me a picture of that amazing party that you did for the World Cup finals, and I'll put it on the cover. And even if I would say that, I still never got the photo. So people just didn't understand that the next step was to actually send the editor the photos. So
That
I
sounds pretty
know.
obvious.
So I know. So I was like, well, I think I can help them. So when I left, I started with about 5 clients right out of the gate. That was when blogs were just starting.
Mm,
Social media was just a glimmer in our eyes. So I did a lot of blog writing, and I did a lot of then pushing their stories out to other media, my old magazine included, that I kept a good relationship with. Um, so that's kind of where it started from there. The PR part of it, which absolutely now is my like least favorite part of the job, because there's so many other more interesting ways to get our stories out there than having
mhm.
someone else tell them. I like to have my clients actually, own their stories and tell their stories and connect with their audiences in a way that there's an engagement happening.
That
So
sounds like
that's
the only
where
way
it
to
started.
do it, really, that would have any real significant impact.
Well, I think that there is value in that third party credibility. And that's where the
Mm,
media comes into. So if you say we're Nina to have an article about yourself and your videos um, and your work with them, then it's like there's a third party talking about you. And that is a credibility source. So there is
mhm,
definitely some value to that. But right now, with media having such problems, I mean, they are laying off a lot of staff. They went through a big transition with digital and print, and
mm,
um, media changed. And of course, a lot of these journalists now are taking their own stories and making their own stories on platforms like Substack, and they're now creating their own. Again, like I did with those little magazines that we used to make at the kitchen table, they're making their own media that you can now subscribe to for like, nominal fee, just like you would the New York Times. And a lot of them are New York Times journalists that have been laid
mm.
off and now are telling their stories, and big stories too, not just little ones, but full on national, international news stories. So that's kind of in a different realm than like the creative part, but they're still creating. So I
Yeah.
find them to be very interesting because they're creating their own path, really, which
Yeah.
is
Can we go there for a second?
sure,
So that in itself is a creative act, is going onto Substack,
right,
not being on the traditional social media.
right.
And that has its own pros and cons. If anybody's listened to or watched Social Dilemma, there's some
Mm,
consequences to Facebook and all of the
sure.
various media outlets that are on the internet. But there's people are still finding a way to get around the difficulties that have now emerged over the last, what, 10, 20 years that the media is no longer print or
Right.
exclusively print. So something like Substack, how do people get how do well-known journalists and writers go onto a platform like that and still get the viewers?
The traction.
Yeah, how does that happen?
Well, okay, so that is something that I work a lot with I work a lot on my own stuff and I work a lot with my clients because I
Yeah.
believe that you need to create your own little audience and it will grow. So those people, and it's not easy, but they start small. The how did like I because I subscribe to Allison Roman. She is a chef. She had to leave New York Times when there was some big kerfuffle there, and she has a newsletter now that I subscribe to, and I guess she went on to her so there is a marriage between social media and building our audience because that's where you can find them. So that is why social media still is so important. And yes, I know there's the algorithms and like only 5% of people see your stuff. It still doesn't mean you shouldn't be there because it's free, one, and those 5% or whatever are your audience. They are the people that will tune in when you have something to say. So when you go on Instagram and when you put it into your link saying, "Hey, I'm going to start a newsletter. Here's where to follow me," it builds slowly. And then Substack does help their people with a lot of marketing. They put it out there too. Once you are like a verified author on that platform, and I believe you pay them a percentage of your subscription, but not very much. There's
Mm,
that with a couple different of these different outlets. So that's how they make their money, and they're going to help and support the authors that are on there. So these people, some of these people have gotten to 100,000 subscribers. So it's pretty amazing. And I think again, it is the combination, and this is where I say marketing. And marketing is just such a tiny little word for a big thing because marketing is like taking a slice of everything that's out there and doing a little bit every day on it. So a little bit on Instagram, telling them about the story that you just had and telling them how they can read more of you. A little bit on YouTube and telling them how they can find out more about you. You have to. There was a time when marketers felt like just pick a lane and be in it, for the social media, and now it feels like I'm going to pick all lanes at a little bit. Pick one big lane, but now do a little bit on all of them. So, especially now that everyone is on Instagram, like it's really blown up, you can barely, find people
yeah.
anymore as now there's so many people on there. So,
So how
um,
do you distinguish yourself in a noisy and
come
overpopulated place like Instagram?
it has definitely become that. And I think the main thing is to be consistent, to put out stories that tell people your story about who you are. Again, the main point of marketing is to get people to know you, trust you, like you. And we think we've all heard that probably a bazillion times.
Right.
I know, but maybe there are people that haven't heard that. I mean, yeah, I don't discount that someone living under a rock might not have heard that. But then again, like, you and I might talk marketing a lot or something, but then a lot of people aren't. They're just like wanting to, create their flowers, or they're wanting to do their art. They're wanting to put out their best food ever, kind of thing. And they don't know how to get out there.
Yeah,
That's that's a big part of it. And if I can say something in this respect, this happened the other day. So I'll tell you a story.
great.
Um, I wasn't working with a friend, I was just talking with a friend who is a writer and had done a book. This is not a client. Um, she'd written a book and she wanted me to help her with an Instagram story. And so I did a quote on it and I thought, oh, and in the caption, you can put this and this. And she's like, no, I won't put this out onto Instagram feed. I go, how come? Why not? Why wouldn't you? This is a great story. She had done a story on that was timely, and she was still blogging, and she was still trying to promote her book. Um, she goes, oh, because my Instagram is private. I go, well, why would it be private? Why?
Yeah.
I don't understand. So you just want to show pictures of sunsets and flowers on your private thing, but I go, but if you're doing a story on Instagram stories, you're only going to show it to the people then that are already on your private account, and I'm not sure how you're going to break out from your group. So I think there's like this fear of people that are creative and creators who think, I can't promote myself, I'm not a brand. And this is where my brand therapy comes in, because you are a brand. We are all our own brands. We are all our own media now,
Mm.
right? Now that, like, look at us right here. We're our own media creating content, which is also another word that we don't like so much, but it is
Content?
content, right? Yeah,
Yeah.
because everyone's like content, content, content. Um, so the brand therapy would be, I do brand therapy on people because brands are people. They really are. I have to
We
be
need
like,
therapy.
yeah, I have to go like, well, what's your fear about like trying to get more customers? Just in a nutshell, why are you afraid of trying to get more customers?
Yeah.
Why? So there's definitely a fear of putting our stuff out there and being judged, fear of judgment. And we just have to get over that, because honestly, no one's everyone's just doing their own thing. We're all just trying so hard out here. So it's the whole, like, even
Yeah.
showing up with your face on things or talking like this. Anyway, I think that fear is a big part of it for people.
I do too.
Yeah.
What do you think about this idea? I have found in my own experience and in talking with people, when we take our attention off of ourselves and how am I
Mm,
doing and how do I look and how does it sound, to really pointing to what it is we're passionate about,
right.
which is one
Right.
of the words that you emphasize, which I
Yes,
think is
I do
worth
use that word.
emphasizing,
I use that word a lot.
is
I get
that,
grief for that word too. Can I just
oh
go through the list
Lordy.
of words that people are like love to?
Yes, well, words are very misleading sometimes.
Mhm.
But I think that what I've seen is that the more people point towards what they care about, that it takes the pressure off of them. It's not so much about me, it's look at
Right.
this.
Right. That's
And go ahead.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Well, I just think that there are so many people that struggle with, is this right? Even, is this the right photo? Is this the right caption? Is this the right
Oh,
platform?
yes.
That the more it's about the thing we love, the less it's
Ex
about us. And when it's less about us, it's not so scary.
I think the fear comes in when those two things, intertwine, when
Mm,
the passion and your ego come in together. So
yeah,
that's, and one of your questions to me was, what is one of the biggest, what did you say? Why don't people see the greatness in their lives and stuff?
yeah,
And it is because they cannot take that step back. You have to step
mm,
back and see your company or yourself or your work through the audience's eyes. And this is why I believe in marketing, like with empathy and with heart, so
mhm,
that you have to go like, what does my audience want or what do they need? How can I give it to them? So if you are being passionate about even like say sourdough bread, and you then get on there every day and you talk to them about sourdough bread. First of all, sourdough bread has a lot of I've got a lot of metaphors around sourdough bread, because like it takes a long time, but it doesn't take an MBA to make a sourdough bread. And this is like the anything on the internet, anything you need to learn, anything you're afraid of with marketing, you don't know how to make a landing page, or you don't know how to
Mhm.
find your audience or send out a newsletter, it's all on the internet and it only takes time to understand it. And at the end of the day, you'll have a beautiful loaf of bread, you'll have a beautiful business. It's kind of usually that's my sourdough moment kind of story. I know, but I think like I said, like with that woman that was afraid to put her brand out there or afraid to talk about it. Now I think so that I think that's a really interesting point about people. There are people that are very talented, but they are afraid to promote. And then there are people that are
Mm.
not so talented, but they promote. So guess who gets and then the talented ones are always like, oh, that person just doesn't even why? Why care about that person? They don't know. They're not, they're not up here with me. I went to Yale or whatever it is that they want to like compare. Yeah, I go, yeah, but that person's out there doing it. They're showing up. They're in the arena, as that one big quote is saying right now. They're in the arena getting bloodied, getting haters, getting whatever, but they are in it and they're doing it. And I think that getting in, digging in, doing it is more important than all the talent in the world. I have to say that,
Yeah.
it's kind of an
Well,
interesting
I think
juxtaposition.
you're spot on with that, and don't you think that this is what I think anyway, it's my one of my wonderings, or if not conclusion, is that having a time limit sometimes really
Mm.
squashes our creative
Mm.
impulses
Like saying
because
you have to have something by 30 or 40 or 50 something or
or yes, anytime it's I know this for myself anyway. Anytime I'm trying to make something or create something, whether it's with my hands or writing or whatever it is, that unless there is a designated time
Mm.
frame that somebody else has imposed on me, I
Right.
can drive myself nutty with saying, I
Oh,
have
yeah,
to get this
making
done now.
changes. Yeah.
Yeah, and then endless changes and it's not perfect enough but
Yeah,
having that, "Oh, it's gotta be done by this time." I'm the only one who's giving myself that constraint,
that's
and yet
great.
that's
Right.
another, um, I think, real factor in inhibiting creativity from just, "Okay, what was to show up? What am I gonna create today?"
Exactly, so they say, like, deadlines are the WD-40 of creativity, right? Because it will lubricate your creativity, and you will be able to do it. I think, and I think you mentioned at the very end, showing up. So again, creativity is really sitting down there or creating is sitting every day, coming to the keyboard, coming to the easel, coming to your business. And your business can be really creative too. Businesses are fascinating and creative and wonderful. And but we need to show up for them every day. And we can't someone says, "Oh, you work too hard." I'm like, I don't know if I work too hard or if I'm not working enough because I feel like, you know, I do feel a little bit driven because there's so much I want to say and so much I want to do. And yeah, you have to figure out. So I don't know if this is kind of what you're talking about with deadlines and things, but I have to figure out like on my whiteboard of like, what do I want to accomplish this week, this month, this year? I
Today.
think those are really important things. And then things can
Yeah,
like come in between, right?
absolutely.
Yeah. So I did that 30-day, I did those newsletters for 30 days in a row.
Yeah.
And I made myself a deal that well, I didn't think it was gonna be 30 days. I'm glad I didn't stay until the end of the pandemic. I'd still be sitting there writing newsletters. I said, I'm going to write a newsletter a day for 30 days or until we are out of quarantine. So luckily I said 30 days because I thought in 15 days I'll be done. So, but I sat down every day. I made the whole big whiteboard. I said, could I do this even? And I wrote down 30 things. And some of them made it, some of them didn't. As I kept moving through the 30 days, other stories would come up. But I sat down every morning to do it. And I had to finish by a certain time and I had to post by a certain time. I said every day by I think it was 3:15, this is going out. Come hell or high water. And my most popular one, and you do talk about this a little bit in your questions about vulnerability. My most popular one was the one where I was like, oh man, have I hit a wall? I'm just like, really? I have to do another newsletter? And so I just said, I hit the wall. But then when I hit the wall, I looked to other people for inspiration. I read a book or I looked at a book and I found a great quote and I was like, yes, this keeps me going. It's like when you hit that wall, that's actually I what is on the other side of that wall is quite amazing because you've made it to that point um, where you could not take yourself any further, really. And then you take yourself further. And
Mm.
that's where you're like, wow, that's really where you're like, I can do these things. I can make this happen. I can create at a level of this, at this level, you know? So,
So this actually comes back around to something we were talking about earlier, uh, about uh, the stories that can be told to help other people on their journeys. So this example that you just shared seems to me a really good example that when we all get stuck, we all hit a
mhm.
wall, we all lose any sense of creative juice. Like, it's over now. I'm giving up. There's
Right.
nothing
It's
left.
just like, why
I'm
bother? Let me
dry.
just,
Right. It's over. And actually, sometimes that's the best thing to
sometimes,
say,
yes.
makes room for
Sometimes.
something new to come in. But
Yeah. Yeah.
but having your example that you used in your blog of, thank you, of showing your own vulnerability
Mhm.
is so helpful. And I'm
Mhm.
and I'm I'm guessing that that's what you encourage with the people that you work with, is to talk about that process of moving through a difficulty, or moving through a creative block, or finding what's in your way and discovering
Yeah.
how you can move that out of the way.
Yeah, it's one of, because yeah, you don't wanna do that too often. You really have to that is a you gotta play that card carefully. So one of the things I would say there for the people I work with would be the times when, you need to connect, say, like with a mentorship, or you
Mhm.
have an internship going on in in your company. To be a mentor, I mean, at some point, we all now become mentors because we've been around for a while and we have something to teach. So, a couple of my clients go out and they do presentations and speaking. And yes, it's the times when they let their guard down and tell people how they got through a challenging moment. And again, like I said, you don't always want to have everything be challenges. Sometimes I read people's social media and I'm like,
Right.
girl, you've got
Don't
some
say that.
problems in your life. No, I don't want to hear something about them having so many problems. I just want sometimes, but I also don't want to just sit and try to them to have me be inspired all the time too. So there's a fine line between that. Um, So I would say, I guess with social media and things and telling your story would be just to approach kind of every day of like, what's going on in your life? How can you take a step back and go, what is happening in my life that somebody might be able to learn from? Not
Mm.
necessarily that I have to be vulnerable for, or that has to be a challenge to get over and all those things, because really that was only one time in 30 days that I said that. But I can tell other people's stories that are vulnerable and had challenges, and that's kind of what I did. So, uh, when people were pivoting, another word that everyone has a problem with, when people were pivoting during that time and reinventing themselves, um, I would talk about their issues and what was and shed light on what they were going through, because everyone has different, like, so a restaurant that has to pivot into being a market is
Mm.
completely different than like me just hitting the wall as a writer. So I tried to show the takeaways from that each time too, because the other thing people have a problem with, I think, sometimes is seeing a big story and then not understanding how it relates to them. So
Say
what I
more about
tried to
that.
do, huh?
Say more about that.
Okay. So like say anything, even like a book, like they go, oh, I'm not going to read that book about dogs because I don't have a dog. I go, yeah, but you might like to learn a little bit about this dog or that dog, or that's not really the story, or people pigeonhole stories very quickly, I find. So then they pigeonhole people as well. And So I think instead of like, so I would say, here's what this restaurant did, high-end Michelin star restaurant now is a market. How does that relate to me as a writer? So there was like three takeaways that I put at the beginning of the story. So then people would know as they read through it where they could kind of find that, the
Mm.
what it takes to be tenacious, what it takes to have persistence, what it takes to have creativity and look at your whole business now from a completely different, you were a Michelin star restaurant yesterday and now you're a market. So how to survive, that was a big one, survive and thrive. Um, so yeah, as a business, they had to figure out how to survive. I think those are universal themes
Yeah.
that we can find almost everywhere. And that's why not to read something because, oh, it's by a chef and I don't care about cooking, or oh, it's about business and I don't have a business, is to be cutting yourself off from a lot of really good lessons that you can then kind of see. So, but it still takes that mind that's able to turn it around, I guess.
So, do you think that turning things around is one of the characteristics of being creative?
It has to be, right? Because if you can't see things from a lot of different perspectives, I think,
Yeah.
um, I mean, some paintings, well, we could talk about a lot of paintings like Kelly or a Rothko or Rauschenberg or something, and people will be like, not a Rauschenberg, but a Pollock. Oh, I could do that. Yeah, I can do that. I hate that when people say that. No, you can't do it. First of all, yes, you can. Okay. But it won't be the same as the Pollock. It will be your um interpretation of emotions and things like that in that form or that genre. So it's fine, but not to, you wouldn't want to denigrate the artist. So that's why I think when things are uncomfortable, and when you are uncomfortable looking at something and you're not sure why I should be looking at that market or why I should look at that Rothko, um, you have to then, like, I guess, internalize it and go like, why is this uncomfortable to me? Am I, you know, I don't think I can think in abstract, or I don't think I can think that. So then let me teach myself. Let me look into this more. Because I also think that creativity is an action, like not a feeling. Like you don't show up to your job every day and go like, I feel inspired or I don't feel inspired. You just show up and you keep writing and you keep on being creative. Um, because it can be a learned skill within ourselves. And Seth Godin, who's a big marketing
Yeah.
person, talks about that in his new book called The Practice. I would highly recommend everyone to read that. Definitely, because he has been talking about creativity for years
Yeah.
in his courses. And so this whole book is about that and about how we just need to show up. And that would definitely be like the philosophy of my life is show up, see what happens.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm with you on that one. You're definitely preaching to the choir in that point. So, I'm going to circle around to a different angle now. It's what is it that intrigues you about telling someone's story?
Mm,
Why would you what is it about a client, a potential client and their idea? What is it that gets you excited about what they have to offer when it does?
right. Well, I can tell you a story. The
Good.
other day, my friend Irma, oh gosh, I always say her name, Harjakasuma, from Studio Left. She posted this picture of her and her like squad, let's call it, all dressed like in black, all fierce with sunglasses on in front of one of their creations, which was a dome called the Shell. And it was at this row downtown LA art exhibit. I'm like, I have to tell the story because that's great that I don't know. I mean, here she is, this kind of tiny person, and she's got this squad around her, and they are just fierce, and they are standing in their creation, like literally standing in it, like that whole Sheryl Sandberg, like lean in. This is like standing in it. They are more than leaning in. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I have to tell that story. I think I've told Irma's story now like 3 times, but I always, like, I always do a blog on her. She says the most amazing things. She's always thinking. She's a big reader. And so I always, that's personal. I always have to do that. But some of my, with my clients, when I'm talking to them and we're talking about their business, I can go like, oh, that's so great. Yes, we could do that and this and this. And so that kind of goes into my proposal for them. So while they're talking to me, I'm listening really carefully for those things. Like one time, a linen company said to me, "Oh, and we just put in a whole water reclamation, thing in the back." I'm like, "What? You did that? That's amazing. That should go out to the press. That should be your lead. That you are the big sustainability, uh, you are at the top of your game with this." Another friend who started doing working with sound because she is now having to take her band on to things like Zoom meetings. She did so much research. I'm like, you just need to put that across your website. We now know the best sound for your Zoom meetings. So again, it's like I just can see where people aren't stepping into those things that they know so well because they're in their business. They
Mm,
know they're working in their business. So it's hard to step back. And so that's what I would say to anyone is to step back and go, what about my business is different than that business? And it doesn't have to be that different. It can be like you're a dog walker and all you do is say, we show up on time because that's so important to your audience, right? And then your audience is like, well, wait, if you show up on time, does that mean the other guy doesn't? So it starts making them think. It can be that simple. Doesn't have to be such a complicated thing. It doesn't have to take tons of research. Let's research that tagline or whatever. Um, so those little tiny things that you can start to reveal and unveil for your audience that starts to make them think, oh, I need that, or I want
mhm.
that. I have that problem. That person solves my problem.
That makes
And
a
so
lot of
anyway, but
sense.
that brings it back to like when I see those little things, I'm like, oh yes, yes, yes. That's where I get excited. So
So that to me points to what you might call a great story. It's a great story because of what someone can learn, what someone can be taught, some
right.
way of expanding one's own self-awareness, one's own possibilities.
How it transforms the person who is listening also. So a
Well,
great story engages us, changes us, motivates us, and can transform, I
yeah,
believe.
for sure. And so how would you define the difference between heart-centered, using the M word,
Yeah,
marketing,
marketing.
and something more, oh, more dry?
Right.
What's the difference for
Um,
you?
well, again, there's a lot of analytics and things that go into marketing. There is a lot of data, and I respect all of that. I just don't like it. So it's not going to be my thing. But social media has the analytics. I do watch those kind of things because that is where I do believe social media is heart on the ground. You can
Mm,
look and you can see what people are responding to and what they're liking about you and what they're not liking about you. And it is more empathetic marketing. That again, why I call it brand therapy instead of, um, hardcore marketing that will get you your results kind of thing. So it's more about all of my marketing efforts are about how can you connect with your audience, how can you tell your story better. So the analytics really come in: how many more subscribers do you have to your newsletter, how many more to the YouTube, how much engagement do you have when you're on a call, or when or who's calling you to check into your services. So, yeah, all of those analytics, I just don't. They would be important for, like, say, Facebook ads, if you're doing those kind of Facebook ads and you're doing all of those kind of things, which I do. They just none of all of my people kind of are service oriented or
mhm,
artistic. And so
mhm.
it's really hard to get a read analytically on how many people, if you're selling widgets, you can figure out how many widgets you sold. It's really hard for a
Right.
service or for an artist to see results. It's more like, ROI would be more like result or on intention rather than on your investment. Like, what are you
Mm,
intending to do with this? Do you want to create a beautiful online world that people enter and want to be part of your world and part of your next creation? So I think that's, did that answer that?
yeah.
Okay.
What do you how do you get people to see a bigger picture of what it is that they do and what they can offer the world?
Well, that's just, it depends on the person. They have got to want it also. I
Mm,
mean, I've worked with some of my clients for years, and some of them still won't take that next step on things like, say, writing a book about what they've
mm,
done, or, but I feel like I don't want to push them into that, because I feel like they still have parts of their journey then that they're not ready for that yet. And
mhm,
so I really try, again, this is where the brand therapy comes in. I really try just to guide them to the best place for them. So if they're not ready to, say, put out a series of videos or something, well, then let's try to at least get them on some podcasts or somebody else's show that they don't have to take full responsibility for. Because again, I
mm,
think it's that ego versus insecurity thing. They don't want to look like they're being egotistical and putting themselves out there and being like, well, I'm the big, man on campus or woman on campus. So who am I to put out a series of videos? um, or a book or whatever it is. Who am I is always a big question. I think that people, like, they don't see
mhm.
themselves in that part. And I'm like, well, then that's me doing the therapy, going like, you this, you're this, you're this. So that is, and that happens in any company, anybody's life. There's always somebody in the back saying, you're great. I think you really could do this.
Yeah.
I really think you could do this, until they finally do it. Yeah, it's
So
hard.
you it sounds like you hold the mirror up for them.
I try. I try. I hold the mirror, I hold their hand.
Gotta have a lot of props.
Yes. So, yes, I should have gone to, like, psychology school or something. But you know what? Journalism school is just the same exact thing. You've got to find the story, right? I'm trying to find their story, find it fast, show, and yet you say hold the mirror up to them.
Yeah.
I have been looking at this little thing called, have you heard of Ikigai? The
Yes.
Japanese, you have? So I'm
Yes.
looking into that now. So I'll start to, like, incorporate that. So that's your reason for living, right? Ikigai, it's a Japanese word for
Yes.
reason for living. So it's your passion, what the world needs, or this is one way to look at it, for what you need in your
Mhm.
life, or
Mhm.
what your work is.
Mm.
Your passion, can you get paid for it? What the world needs, and what you love to do. So there's always that kind of funny circle or a Venn diagram that then hopefully would put them all together, between your mission and your vocation, and um, your passion, and what's the last one? Because I have been looking, and your profession, your job, because your
Yeah.
job is what you do and how you make your money. But when they all can come together, um, that's great. And I do work with a lot of people where that all comes together. So the only missing portion is, like, what the world needs and how they can
Mm.
be part of what the world needs. And if their world is only 5 people, that's good enough. Like, your platform doesn't have to be Oprah size, it can be just 10 people. Like, if you can just touch a few people in your lifetime, that's an amazing accomplishment, I think, for us as humans here in our little space on the earth.
Yeah. So
You're
do
like,
you
yeah.
think that here's a question I'm curious about. Do you think that the whether you call it bravery or courage or just it doesn't matter all that much at approach is more prevalent with people who are um, under 30, who are younger, who have grown up in a world that's all social media, all selfies, all there are so many people that are at a younger generation who
Mm,
are more used to putting themselves out there. So
yeah.
I'm curious if you had that experience.
Well, okay. I think that you're asking, Are they better at it, or are they less fearful of putting themselves out there? And I'm going to say no. I'm going to say that I don't think they know what they want.
What they're
I mean,
doing.
yeah. And everybody always tells me like, "Oh, I'm just going to get a 20-year-old to do my social media." I'm like, "Really?" Because, there's a lot of strategy to it. It's not like, I'm not saying not against 20-year-olds. I bet they can do a great job, but there's strategy, and it's not just me, me, me. It's not just like show like a selfie, selfie, selfie. Like I look at some of these Instagram accounts and there's just like picture after picture. And yeah, I mean, that will get you. I'm not sure what the goal is. So unless they have a goal to be like an influencer, or to work for a makeup brand, or something, I'm not quite sure what their goal is, and I don't think they know either. Like I don't think influencer will be a job, at some point down the line, when in fact they've already kind of said that influencers aren't really as important anymore, as companies become more aware of how to do their own social media. They won't need that outside. Again, it's a third party testimonial sort of
Mm,
thing, an influencer, but it's not like they are doing it with a strategy in mind. They are doing it because they look great, or it's because what their friends are doing or something. So again, it has to be the strategy. It has to be able to drive that traffic back to your website, back to your YouTube, back to your wherever, because otherwise, if it doesn't drive traffic, it's just only getting likes, and likes don't pay the bills. So that's where I'm at. And I do think that I do feel sorry for this generation coming up. They do feel very lost. And especially now that the whole Zoom thing is coming on, like they don't know if they know what they want to do. There's so many things, maybe there's too many things to do. And but again, I think that Ikigai is a really great way for them to take a look at that and go to the 5 steps to Ikigai. This guy was talking about it today, like start small, free yourself of old ideas. Don't, be all, I must be an influencer. I must have this many likes or people following me, or I'm not important. Um,
mm,
Seek harmony and sustainability, uh, find joy in the little things, and literally stay present. And this is
mm.
something that I do talk to a lot of my friends are getting like depressed. And I'm like, stay present, just stay here. Don't think about where you were last year versus this year, or where you want to be right now. Just be right here in this moment. Because if anything of this past year has taught us that we do not know anything.
Very
I think that's
true.
a really, really brilliant place to come from for anything. Like we don't know anything. Let's just start from there. So I think it's harder for younger people because they really come out of the gate wanting to know something, and they do have great ideas and things. They just don't know how to maybe implement them in ways that will get them the results that they want.
Mm. That's a really good distinction. One of the things that I see is that people who have been exposed to social media
Hmm.
from the time they were toddlers, have a facility that sometimes is bigger than their knowledge of knowing what to do with it. A
Hmm.
good friend of mine, his granddaughter is 8. I think she's in 3rd grade now, and he was overhearing her on her computer. She was setting up a Zoom call, 8, and then
Oh,
she was sharing a screen with her
oh,
pal.
oh, so cute.
8, 8
Oh my
years
God.
old.
I would never know what to do. That's
I
great.
know.
That's amazing.
So I think it's an interesting distinction that you're making between having a facility and knowing that these tools
How
are
do you,
all available to us, but then how do you use them? You just don't throw spaghetti against the wall.
right,
You
exactly.
you
Zoom calls
start with
are tools. Yes. Yeah. So again, it depends on what that 8-year-old's what is she looking to achieve? But yeah, yeah, yeah. But yes, I mean, gosh, I don't know. These people they're going to come into the world with such a different, um, they're just going to be so, I think, amazing because they will have all of this technical, um, I don't know, what do you call it? Acumen.
Mm,
But and if they can, if our teachers and our mentors can then guide them in the right direction of how to use it. Look at AOC, in Congress. She knows how to use social media, that girl. And so
Yeah.
she's able to really telecast her message to a lot of people who are disenfranchised or feel disenfranchised. So she was a waitress, so that working class thing. So
Hmm.
she can take that working class story to so many more people, and she can become more accessible and more understandable. She can make politics understandable to so many more people because of where she's coming. So that's why I'm thinking that all of these people coming up, if whatever side of the spectrum that they're on or whatever, they can maybe make a lot of change by using it for good and not for evil.
Mm. Which we're all for these
Use that
days.
power for good, children. Yes.
That's right. Let's use it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
I love that idea. I'd like to circle around again to the art of storytelling. And where, how do I've asked you about how you help people see what's valuable about their stories.
Mhm.
How do you, I mean, this is a personal question, I guess, but how do you see what's valuable about your story and what you can share with people,
Hmm.
at
How do
least in
I?
this context?
Well, I think my, as I've kind of almost said all along, my goal or my purpose is to help, I feel like to help others and support them.
Mm,
Um, when I do a writer's workshop now, so I'm working with about 10 people who are all writing their own stories and doing that. And of course, I've got my own clients. And Um, so when I go to say write my newsletter or to tell my story somewhere, I'm like, how can I be most helpful? What is my audience looking for
mm,
today? Are they looking to understand how? I mean, it's hard to say how what everything is, but I think when I talk with people, um, at my the writers workshop really has really opened my eyes to a lot of things. I think everyone is just looking for that a little small things, like little like this like that guy said, what starts small and find the joy in little things.
mm.
So my part would be really just trying to I don't know, gosh, I guess it's just like kind of like be there and tell your story no matter what. And if you happily I have the ability to write, and I have the or rather I've honed my ability to write, and and I really had to figure it out to tell my workshop kind of how to structure, a blog, or how to structure this, or where my weaknesses are when I write. It's always like I bury the lead in the third paragraph. So I know I'm going to go right to that third paragraph and that's my lead. So I guess that's my thing, is just like trying to find those small things in my life that I can be helpful and supportive. As the editor of the magazine, I was able to champion a lot of
Mm,
businesses, put them on the cover, tell their stories. And I feel like that's still kind of my goal when I see Irma creating such amazing things. And like I'm like, why aren't people doing big stories on her? Um, at least I can do my story on her.
yeah.
So I guess that would be like my what I don't know. Does that help?
It d
It's
it
really hard,
does.
like what you're saying, like, how can you look at yourself,
Yeah. And yet,
It's not easy.
no, but yet what I'm hearing and what you're saying is that there's such a commitment to, service,
Mhm.
and your, uh, passion, if you will, for encouraging other people to go beyond what they think is possible and give
Yes.
them a direct way to do that.
Yeah, sometimes I yell at them, so sometimes I'm not so
We all need
supportive.
it sometimes.
And I'm like, "Why are you not doing this? Can you not see it?"
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I know. Yes, yes, again, it can take a long time too, like, it don't let age be a thing in this issue. It doesn't matter how old you are or how young you are when you are ready to tell your story and when you are ready to bloom, that will be your time. I
Mm,
think sometimes, like you said about that, well, something about timing and deadlines sometimes can be an age or a thing,
mm. Yeah,
not to get caught up in that stuff.
yeah.
To just do it. So many people I know are like, "Oh, I could never do that. I can't believe you get on a Zoom call. I could never do that." These are like my parents. I could never do that. I could never do that. I could never do that. If I hear that, I could never do that one more time, because that's just going into their psyche. So the
Yeah.
more times you say I could never do something, um, the the more it's going to be true, you know?
Self-fulfilling
Yeah,
prophecy.
exactly. So
And
so
how
why
would
not
you
just say,
know?
"Wow, I'm amazing."
How
I
would
don't
you
know.
know whether you could do it or not if you didn't try?
Well, that's the other thing too. Yes. How do we know? Look at what we've all done this year. My God. And
Yeah,
look at how much we've had to change and adapt. And
yeah.
I think we all big pat on the back to humankind across the globe for adapting and putting a mask on. And now we're all just like walking around with masks on and trying to find our identity again. It's I mean, it truly is. Oh, sorry. Truly is inspiring and shows you what human and humanity can do in the worst of times, I think.
So the metaphor of a mask is also literal.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. And then you
Yeah,
can make it creative. And there you go.
that's right, and so people have. One of the
Yeah.
things that's reminding me of is something you said early in our conversation about being present,
Hmm.
because to me, that is one of the almost the preconditions for being able to be creative. Because if I'm stuck in my thinking about how it should be or how it isn't or what it may look like at some other point, I have
Mm,
no possibility of seeing what's right in front of me and how I could
right.
rearrange the pieces or even see them more clearly that's right in front of me.
Right. Right. That's brilliant. I mean, because so many people don't see what's right in front of them. And I think
Mm.
that is the purpose of like gratitude moments,
Mm,
just being grateful for everything and then looking around you and going, what am I grateful for? And I think that also goes into the being in the moment and the creation process, because then you see, oh, I am grateful that I can write. I am grateful that I have an audience. Um, I'm grateful that Nina asked me on her program. I'm grateful for all these things. And then from that foundation, if you will, then you can really create. Because if you're stuck in that crazy artist mode and you're just, not feeling good about yourself and you're hating yourself and why aren't I as good as that person or that person? Then, yeah, then whatever you create will just be, no one will want it. And that's not a good place to be either.
yeah, it has a vibe to it, don't you think?
A vibe.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
people
Yeah.
that
That's a word I love.
and I think people feel that even if the words sound good
Yeah.
or they read well on paper, but underneath there's a vibe that is more eloquent than the words.
Yeah, I always say when you write, think about the person that you're writing for. I mean, I literally close my eyes and I write and I end up smiling. By the time I'm done, I'm smiling. And I'm like, I feel like we're connecting and I'm smiling. If I'm not
Mm.
smiling, then it's probably like a bunch of crap. So then I throw it out. I'm like, okay, that was a bunch of crap. Let me just throw that out. And then I'm going to, okay, I got that.
Yeah. Well, it also goes back to what you were talking about earlier about connecting.
Mhm. It's just about making a connection. And that's what I say. Like,
Yeah.
I have to write. I have to write. I would, if I was on a boat in the ocean, I would write. I would try to like, who would want to read it? Does the dolphin want to read it? Would he like to read it? I would try to find someone to share it with. I think it's about sharing, connecting. That's all we want to do, right? That's all we want to do as humans. We want to have people over for dinner. We want to share our stories at the end of the day. And hopefully we will
Yes.
someday.
And if we don't share them in person right now, at least we have these
We
kinds of screens in which to share them.
This is another thing. This is why the 2008 recession was so horrible. We didn't have this. And this has
Yeah.
really helped be able to make people be able to have virtual events, virtual conversations, virtual relationships. I mean, yes, it's virtual,
Yes.
but it's virtually great. you know?
That's
Oh,
right. That's
there's
right.
another good.
As long as I put aside my assumption or expectation of how it should look,
Right,
then
right.
so many people and so many organizations have actually done well during the pandemic
Very much so. Yes.
because they are using this platform
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
reaching more people than they would have.
Yes. Yeah.
So,
No, it's great. It is.
hidden
So
lining.
yeah, we're very, very lucky to have had the internet and all of that. So I will never, talk bad about social media or the internet because it's helped us to continue.
Yeah.
This would just be horrible. Can you imagine
Yeah.
without that ability to connect and us just sitting around waiting, waiting. So
Yeah. Waiting and wondering.
waiting and wondering. So, and we still are, but at least we're all together doing it. You're in
Well,
New York. I'm
I
here.
think what you've been saying during the course of our conversation is really relevant because for us to be creative uh, in a lockdown, in confinement with restrictions, sometimes that's stifling. But on the other hand, other times, like this time,
Right.
has been really fruitful. It
Right.
all depends on where we come from, right? How we
Right.
think about it, what we will allow to happen.
Right. Yeah, it's just letting it flow through you. And look at Shakespeare. He wrote I don't know which play he wrote, but he wrote one of them during the plague while he was in quarantine.
Yeah.
So we're not all Shakespeare, but
We can still do our thing during
we
the
can still write our
plague.
Substack newsletters.
That's right. Well, we're unfortunately coming to the end of our time, and I would love it if you had any parting words, something you'd like to share with people, what you're up to right now, what you'd like them to know about where you are and how people can find you.
Well, I think I've pretty much, gosh, have I said, let me look at my notes. I think I've gone over everything. I mean, I do, teaching, writing, speaking, connecting. Those are all things I'd like to take to the next level and next year in 2021. Thank God it's almost here. And so I do have my writer's workshop that I do. I'm starting that in January again. So, and then I am going to be trying to write my brand therapy marketing book. It's almost pretty much done.
Uh,
And then that will have like worksheets and work things in it that people can do for their own companies or services or
mm.
um, creations. And then they can just find everything. Like all of my stuff is on my name, which is spelled Liese Gardner, Gardner. That's like my .com is that, my Instagram, my Facebook. Thank goodness for having an unusual first name. I was able to do it all. And oh, and I do my conversations with creatives too on Wednesdays on Facebook, but that will probably be starting up again in the new year. I won't do another one next year. I mean, next week. I think things will kind of peter out next
Yeah,
week. I don't know
winding
what I don't
down.
know where people are going for for the holidays, but you know how the holidays, everyone's kind of, I don't know, kind of filters out. But no, I
True.
think that, I mean, being able here to be here, Nina, and be talking about creativity, I mean, like what a privilege. So I want to
Mm.
say I feel very grateful for being here today. And thank you so much for letting me ramble on and on.
Oh, I'm grateful that you were on the call and that you rambled because you had lots of gems to share, and I really
Thank you.
appreciate that.
Thanks. And I will definitely share this when it comes out. I'd be happy to
Thank
share
you.
with everybody. I'm looking forward to that.
Thank you so much.
You are welcome.
Okay, thank you everyone for watching and listening, and we'll see you next time.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
everybody. Bye.
Bye for now.